After dating for a year and a half, 27-year-old Pierce Brosnan and 38-year-old Cassandra Harris moved in together with her 2 children. Pierce suddenly found himself playing the role of father.
I was daunted. But Charlotte and Christopher were so accepting of me, and it was just so comfortable, and it was so much fun.
Producer and friend Jerome Hellman says Pierce was a natural.
I think Charlotte and Christopher looked on Pierce as the only real father they'd ever known. I would have said he was a doting father.
Pierce and Cassie had each other, but they didn't have much money. So Pierce took odd jobs to survive.
We set up this family. We got by. You know, we just got by.
The couple managed to keep busy with the occasional television or stage job. Pierce tried out for a part in Lord Richard Attenborough's A Bridge Too Far, with no success.
Pierce, unbeknown to me totally, was auditioned by the assistant directors and the casting directors and the regimental sergeant major who was doing the drilling, who said he was by no means tough enough. No good for us, they said. And bless his heart, he was dismissed. He didn't even get a chance to audition.
Ironically, it was Cassie who first appeared in a Bond film.
She got a James Bond movie, For Your Eyes Only. She was filming in Corfu. It was incredible. I mean, I'd never been abroad. I'd never had a lovely holiday, so the Bond production office paid good money, and she was on great per diem. And I went out there with the kids. I remember just joking with Cass about being Bond. I never expected it to happen. It wasn't a wish, it wasn't a desire. That wasn't where I was going.
Brosnan was still a long way from playing Britain's top spy, but he did land a role that he was perfectly suited for. A television epic about Irish immigrants, the Manions of America.
For the first time, it was something which I could do. It was just destiny. It was one of those doors just opening. I'm Irish. This is a time to put down all that anger that's there. So here was this wonderful 6-hour miniseries, good payday. And she had done the Bond movie. And we said, good, great, let's get married. I can support you now. I can look after you now. I can look after the children. We can get a little place somewhere.
Pierce Brosnan and Cassandra Harris married in December of 1980.
One of the most compelling things about Pierce and Cassandra in the early years was the strength of the two of them as a couple, and I feel she played a very, very important role in that. He looked to her as a mentor and a guide, and he loved her very, very deeply, and that was absolutely evident.
Makeup artist Ron Roylance became a close friend of the family.
I'd say sometimes she wore the pants. She was like his agent, his bookie, you name it. She was everything.
Cassandra devoted herself to helping her new husband succeed.
Manions was coming out in America on ABC. And Cassie said, look, we should go over there.
Pierce and Cassie flew to Los Angeles. They lined up as many auditions as possible, but Pierce only needed one.
The first audition was Remington Steele. And they said, would you be prepared to come over to America? I said, oh yeah, sure, no problem.
Pierce and Cassandra moved the family to Los Angeles, and in the fall of 1982, Brosnan joined Stephanie Zimbalist in the lighthearted detective show Remington Steele.
He was a darling. He was sweet and dear and understandably nervous, and we both were like, oh my gosh, what are we getting into here?
It was also very frightening, because I never worked in such a fast pace. You know, it was 7 days to do an episode, 22 episodes in the season. And I was terrified.
Cassie came onto the set, and she said, just don't go play it that way. Just be yourself, be your goofy self, just like you're at home. And he changed the way he played that character from a result of that. And you could see the success, and blame it on Cassie.
Remington Steele not only took advantage of Pierce's natural good looks, but gave him an opportunity to show off some of his skills, like fire eating, and, of course, his sense of humor.
Everybody that watched Remington knows that he's very physically funny. I mean, all the stuff that he did with the tie and the look and his whole and all that stuff and running and leaping, and, you know, He was also not afraid to look like a Wally, as he would say. He was not afraid to wear the plaid pants on the golf course.
After the first season, Pierce played a role very different from Remington when he starred in the film Nomads, directed by John McTiernan.
He explained that Remington Steele was a string out of the top of his head. And this is Remington Steele. And all of a sudden he was Remington Steele. And then he cut the string and he becomes somebody else.
Nomads wasn't a commercial hit, but the film demonstrated Brosnan's versatility. When the film wrapped, Pierce returned to Los Angeles for the second season of Remington Steele. In 1983, Cassandra and Pierce expanded their family with the addition of a son, Sean. Later that same year, during a trip to Ireland for an episode of Remington Steele, Pierce finally met his own father, the man who abandoned him 30 years before.
There was a knock on the door. Opened the door. And there he was, Tom. You know, he was a flinty Irishman from Kerry. And he came in, he said, Jez, you're very good looking, very good looking. Ah, yes. And I said, thanks, Tom, sit down, this is my family. And we sat and we had a cup of tea. You know, well, you're looking at this man and you're thinking, yes, yeah, sure, I see it. That's a bit of me there and a bit of me here. But we were strangers, you know.
That was the last time Pierce ever saw his father. 2 years later, Tom Brosnan died of Alzheimer's disease.
He wasn't that close to his father, but obviously being that it was blood, that there was, you can't escape the fact your parents, whether or not they abandoned you or stayed with you the rest of your life.
He said, your dad murdered Bill, who was my stepfather. He said, no, your dad, Tom. I said, he's dead. I said, yeah, he's dead. That was it. You know, kind of sad, no regrets.
In 1985, after 4 seasons, Remington Steele was canceled due to low ratings. But for Pierce, the timing was perfect. After 13 years, Roger Moore was retiring from the role of James Bond. The search was on for a replacement. All alone at the top of the list was 32-year-old Pierce Brosnan. When we return, Pierce Brosnan wins the coveted 007 title, and then loses it.
The producers of that show and the network, by my view at least, conspired to prevent him from doing that.
And later, Pierce gets a second chance.
But I never thought he was going to come back in. Never.
In 1986, after 4 years, NBC canceled the television show Remington Steele. It couldn't have been better timing for Pierce Brosnan. Roger Moore was retiring, and producer Cubby Broccoli was looking for a new James Bond.
I've done the wardrobe fittings, I've done the photo shoots, I've done all of this. Cubby Broccoli and I, behind this big desk, Pinewood Studios.
Pierce's agent, Fred Spector, handled the negotiations.
He was booked to do James Bond. Contracts had been signed, but Cubby Broccoli insisted that he not go back to Remington Steele, and in fact the show had been canceled. But they had a 60-day turnaround period where they had the right to re-exercise the option. We had been assured by the network that they definitely were not going to exercise the option.
At least that was the plan. When Pierce was announced as the new James Bond, people began tuning in to Remington Steele to check him out. The ratings began to rise.
58th day, 59th day went by, 60th day, we're almost there, we're almost there.
24 hours before the expiration of that turnaround period, NBC exercised their option to renew the series. Needless to say, that was the end of James Bond, for the moment.
You know, one was powerless to do anything. It was frustrating, and I was angry.
For reasons that I will never understand, the producers of that show and the network, by my view at least, conspired to prevent him from doing that.
Pierce returned to the set of Remington Steele, but with the Bond hype gone, the ratings plummeted. Only 6 additional installments of Remington Steele were shot before the network finally pulled the plug in February 1987. Pierce tried to put away his disappointment and go on.